Hey folks, welcome back to the new year, and this is my first session with the amazingly talented ALIMISH, who I know personally. You'll find out a little bit about that in due course. ALIMISH, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good. Even though the weather's not too nice, it's nice to get back into the new year and to start going ahead and seeing what's going to come.
Are you hitting the new year with enthusiasm? Got lots of nice things lined up?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I did a massive review at the end of last year to see what I kind of hadn't achieved that I wanted to. And I mean, this is very analytical and a bit too over the top. But then I looked at all the steps I could take for this year. So it just made me really excited. I mean, let's see how I go now over the next few months. I'll probably be crying and be like, oh, I can't. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Likewise, I've got some exciting things lined up, and I've already made my plan, like my 12-month
Yeah.
plan of what I'm hoping to achieve this year. So it's the way you've got to be, right? You've got to be
Yeah,
organized and focused.
definitely. I mean, this is such a hard industry if you haven't got a plan, So
Exactly. I always say if you haven't got a destination that you're trying to get to, then how will you ever know if you've got there?
yeah, definitely.
Right, let's dive in and talk about you a bit. So anybody that knows you and your artistry now will consider you as an EDM artist, as a vocalist, but that's not how you started your musical journey. I know that you started off training traditionally, if you like, as a classical vocalist in South
Yeah.
Wales. So tell me about your musical journey and your training and how you got from there to where you are now.
So I started classical training back when I was 9 years old because in Wales, there's not really that many genres that you can get teaching in, which obviously, I mean, it's hard to teach someone to be a pop star, but it's very easy to teach somebody the techniques of how to be a classical singer or a musical theatre singer. So I started classical training at the age of 9. At the age of 11, then I got into the Royal Welsh Music College on a bursary, which was kind of unheard of because I didn't really know what I was doing. I just sounded relatively all right. And then I started doing all of the music theory. And again, I had no idea what I was doing. And I had all of the language classes. And yeah, it was difficult because, I mean, at that age, right, you're learning how to just start doing algebra, let alone like grade 5 music theory is pretty bloody hard. So I did that when I was young, which, to be quite honest, I feel like there's a lot of things I learned from it, but there's a lot of things that I learned that I didn't want from it, which is kind of what steered me then to be like, actually, there is more out there that I could do. Because I used to listen to so much other music. I never listened to classical music, and I kind of thought there's more out there. So I feel like the training really set me up in a way to find out what I wanted from what I didn't want, basically.
Mm-hmm. Which is cool. I mean, I personally as well, I'm classically trained. I started off on violin when I was like 5 years old, and I still refer back to that training all the time, even though I'm not working in the classical genre now. Anytime I'm composing, I'm referring back to
Yes,
my
yeah.
knowledge of harmony and stuff. So it's an amazing grounding, even though, you and I are both not in those fields now. So what was it that particularly drew you to focus in on the EDM scene? Were there specific artists or moments that inspired you that you were like, that is the direction that I want to go in?
So I would say when I was around I think about 13, this song came out. It was Latch by Disclosure and Sam Smith. And it was like, for me, listening to that and hearing how it kind of it didn't really sit in like a key until it got to the chorus. I was like, oh, I love that. And I loved the way that the music kind of flowed. And then I started listening a lot to like Becky Hill when she was on the come up, and Karen Harding. And it's like, I didn't know what the music was, but I knew that it was like something I danced to. And obviously then it was like drum and bass, house music, all of that, and EDM, especially with Avicii. And I knew I wanted to do that. But again, I didn't know how to get into it. So they were like the kind of music I listened to at the age of 13. And then after going to BRIT, I then realized that actually you could produce that type of stuff. Again, I had no idea that what even production was. Like, I thought all of the instruments on the track were physically played. So I had no idea how they played all these instruments. But yeah, it was that was kind of what made me realize that I actually really like this. I'd love to actually sing on this type of stuff, but again, had no idea how to do it.
Yeah. So you applied to the BRIT School age 16 from South Wales to London. You got a place as what the BRIT School calls an out of area student. So you left home at 16 to go and study for 2 years in London, which is a massive deal. That's a real massive commitment to the career route that you wanted to take. So you obviously knew from a young age that was the direction that you wanted to go in. What did you kind of take away from your 2 years at BRIT School in terms of lessons or experiences that have really stuck with you and helped to kind of shape who you are now?
I would say there was a piece of advice that you would actually give me in the corridor when I was with my mum and dad, and it was all about songwriting. And you told me that I needed to write like 100 songs before I'd actually have a good song. And I'd only wrote 2 at this time. I mean, I was like 18 at the time, and I did not want to be a songwriter. I did not find that entertaining whatsoever. And then I thought that coming like later on in life then. So it was like about 2 years later when we had all of the lockdown, that was something that I thought, actually, that does make sense. And that is something I should do. So within that time, using that advice from then, I kind of like wrote so much. And to be honest, right, a lot of it wasn't good. But I realized that it wasn't meant to be good. And that the more I tried, obviously, the more I would get used to what actually was meant to work and what didn't. So that for me, out of all of the things, I remember that so clearly because I remember feeling really against it and thinking, well, no, like I should just be able to do this because I'm a singer. And then I realized, actually, no, that was like the most important piece of advice that I heard, because it was like I listened to a lot of people in the class and I could hear their songs sounded so cohesive. And mine, like, I felt like mine was good, obviously, but it was like, again, when I look at the lyrics now, I realize actually, right, the verse made no sense with the chorus, and the chorus had no definitive story. It was just, I thought the title sounded cool. So for me, that was definitely the best piece of advice that I could have had, because it really did click, but it clicked a lot later than it was at the time. And I feel like I'm glad that it clicked later because I had more life experience to use than I did then. Because, like, I mean, a 16-year-old crying about leaving their mum and living in London was not that relatable. But yeah.
Even though it's a big deal to you at the time.
Massive.
And it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because as you say, being a good musician does not in any way make you a good songwriter.
No.
Songwriting and composing, it's a skill in itself. You wouldn't expect to turn up to a golf course for your first golf lesson and be really good. So why would you expect to be, a great songwriter having never done it? It's a skill that you have to practice and develop.
100%.
Yeah. So talk to me about toplining and co-writing, especially in the EDM scene. I'm sure there will be some people listening to this that have never heard of toplining at all. So tell us, what that is, and tell us about all of that a bit.
So toplining basically is where you write the melody. The thing is, right, people say it's where you just write the melody. I consider toplining to be melody and lyrics, basically, because that's kind of what I do. So the toplining is fitting it around a track that you've been sent. Or, for example, sometimes I get told, can you do a track that sounds like this? So I'll find the instrumental for it that's like a famous track and write a new melody and concept around that, because I know then that's in a similar field to what the person is looking for. But yeah, co-writing in this is really important to have that experience of meeting new people and connecting with them and understanding what their experience is, because you can learn a lot from someone else's experience and use that in the way of how you write as well. But yeah, I feel like toplining in this is very important. It's about coming up with a good, catchy melody, basically, that people can sing. And what I find, right, is in this, catchy is not like considered to be cool. However, every song that does well is catchy. So it's got that hook that makes people want to sing. So that's something that I try to do. I try to think of, what would I want to sing? what do I feel like if somebody else shared it, they would sing along. That's kind of like what I work with when I try and top line stuff.
And do you have a process for trying to assess how good your hooks are? Like, I know for me, when I write something new, my measure of if it's any good or not is, can I remember how it goes the next day before I've listened back to it? And if I can remember how it goes, I'm like, well, that's good because I can remember it. It's catchy. If I can't remember it, I'm like, well, it's probably not catchy enough. Do you have any kind of process that you go through?
What I normally do is like we'll record melodies on this. That's my first point to call is melodies. And then as soon as it's written, normally I'll send it out straight away. So I'll send the a cappella or the track, or if, for example, it was done for a certain person who's working on that track, I'll send it directly to them. I normally wait to see if I get a bite from it, because there's some songs, and I'm not going to name what songs they are of mine, but there's some songs I never expected anything to come of it. And then it's gone on to be quite a good song for me. And it wouldn't necessarily be one that I would like. So it's kind of like, I don't use my own judgment with it, because a lot of the time, my own judgment for my stuff hasn't gone the way that I was hoping it would. So I think there's an element of, if I like it and I remember it next day, but sometimes people are looking for something that's so different that could then be something I don't even like, but does well for them. So I kind of use the theory of like, let it go. And if something comes of it, great. And if it doesn't, then it wasn't meant to be. But then again, I've sent something out like 2 years later and it's had a cut. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't really use my judgment so much with it for other people. I think if it's meant to be, it'll happen. But if not, then I use my own stuff. Anything I really believe in, I use for me. And again, that's stuff that I normally worked on production-wise, a top line in, writing. I'll then use that for me. But I don't really think, is this good the next day? I just let it go and see if anything comes of it.
And that's a skill in itself as well, because in my experience, I've often come across writers who, especially younger, more experienced writers, who have a kind of imposter syndrome. They're always second guessing themselves about quality. Is that good enough? Are people going to judge me about it? And actually learning to just be bold enough to say, yeah, that's what I've come up with. There you go. Listen to it. Tell me what you think. That's that's a skill to develop in itself, just to be able to, as you say, let it go and just let people hear it and make their own judgments. That's tough to learn as well.
It is. I mean, that took me ages, because I remember when just at the tail end of lockdown, when it was like 21, I wouldn't show anyone anything. And then I would get really bitter because I'd think, why am I not successful? I'm thinking, well, I'm not showing anyone anything. And it was because I didn't actually believe in it, like, at all. And what happened was when I wasn't really working with anyone else. I was kind of just doing everything from my house. At this point, right, I'd done one session before, and it was like, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just really hoping for the best. I had all of the gear and no idea, as they say. I had the Apollo, I had like a real good mic, I had everything, but I had no idea how to use it. And it was really valuable when I started working with other people. I mean, I kind of said to people I was working with people. I wasn't. I just wanted to get in with certain people, and it worked well. I then realized that actually trying to find the way that other people work was a good way to kind of implement into myself. And seeing that people were just sending top lines out, I was thinking, I think I could do that. I think that I could get a response. And it was like, for a while, like, I had no response. People weren't coming back to me. But I mean, I was starting at the top. Like, I was trying to find people who were right up the top of their game and send it to them. But I mean, I was a no name. So it's kind of like, are they really going to trust it from somebody they don't know? And to be honest, right, I listened to the a cappellas of some the other day, and they were so bad. Like, the quality of them is so bad. And that's one thing that's been so valuable in all of this, is actually learning how to deliver a real top quality a cappella, and having like a real steady vocal chain that actually sounds like, impressive and sounds good. And I mean, that costs money as well. That costs quite a bit of money to actually build a vocal chain. But it's like, now, from spending that money and making that investment in like learning how to use the stuff, it's made a massive difference on like the return. Because I know now comfortably I can send out all of the top lines. I believe enough now in my writing that I've got to the skill that I want, and like I'll always want to improve, but I'm happy with where I'm at. So I just think the quality of it now matches what I feel I've written when I actually deliver it. So that's made a massive difference.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You need to have, faith in your ability. You need to believe in, in your ability to deliver.
Yeah.
And what you're saying about, I bent the truth, or I lied about, who I was working with. Like, in some instances, you just have to fake it until you make it. Like when I set up my recording studio here, to work with Dolby Atmos, with immersive audio, the first time I mixed the track in Atmos, I hadn't mixed a song in Atmos before, but I have to say, I know exactly what I'm doing.
I know.
Otherwise people aren't going to go to you and say, oh, I'm your first Atmos client. Oh, well, maybe I'll go to someone who's done it before. You say, no, I know exactly what I've been doing. I've been doing it for ages. You have to fake it until you make it. It's the industry almost requires it of you.
I know. I mean, I was taught, right, and I'm not going to name the organization that did this, but I was taught by people that you needed to say, if you were writing a top line in the style of Dua Lipa that you wanted to pitch, bearing in mind, no connections, no nothing, they said that you can then write down you're working with Dua Lipa. And I completely disagree with that, because I feel like that's such a misleading, like, it's not. And I mean, that might have worked for someone, but I didn't feel like the way that they were promoting that was, it's not BRIT, by the way, that's not me. It's not me saying BRIT, you know that. But I didn't agree with that. And I, like, when I said these people, they were people that I'd actually like messaged for sessions, and they were like, oh yeah, let me get back with dates. So I was like, I'm working with these people, even though at the time I hadn't gone in the room with them. Yeah, it was, I mean, I have now, so it did work. But that's something I don't agree with, is like saying that you're working for somebody that like there's no connection. I feel like that's a bit like, oh, are you,
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. You can't straight up lie. But being generous with the truth is different, isn't it?
That's the one.
Well, I suppose it depends where you draw your own boundaries, but for me, that's fine.
I mean, the thing is, right, if it gets you the end result, crack on. As long as it's not criminal, crack on.
Anyway, let's move swiftly on from bending the truth.
The truth be coming out now, so.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of your collaborations. So you've worked with some big names in the EDM scene, like T, Matthias, and your latest singles with Tujamo. So tell me how you approached those specific creative collaborations, and what made those partnerships successful. Like the track Exhale, it's got like 10 million streams on Spotify. Your latest record with Tujamo, which is only out like this month, is already starting to rack up the streams. Just tell me about those two in particular a little bit.
So Exhale, that actually came about because I was working with a duo called Yola Rakoba. I work with James quite a lot, who's one of the writers, and he had this track sent across from T Matthias, and I really liked the way it sounded, and I said, oh, let me try and write a chorus for it. So whilst James popped out the room, we come up with the chorus melody like straight away. And he came back in and he was like, oh, I love it. Let's try and get something to that. And I said, what about Exhale? Because I've been going to a lot of sound baths. I love the sound baths because I've been going to these sound baths, and basically they go like inhale, exhale. And I thought it'd be quite a nice title, because this is one thing as well. I always like to have a title that's a bit different, just because I feel like it stands out a bit more. So we wrote down about 20 minutes, recorded it. I listened to it going home in the car, because I was going home to Wales, and I was like, I hate it. I don't like it. Not for me. I don't like it at all. T came back and was like, I love it. I love it. And I was thinking, right, I'll do it, but I'll probably do it unfeatured, just because of, I didn't feel like it was lining up with what I was going to do with my own project. My own project that had been going on for 2 years and nothing had ever come out. So I was like, yeah, it doesn't align with the project. So then he wanted a second verse, because we'd only wrote the first verse. We wrote the second verse, and he sent it off to a label called Selected the next day, and they came back in about an hour and said that they wanted to sign it, which was pretty mad, because I'd always wanted a release on Selected and never sent anything. So I was pretty excited with that. And James was like, don't be stupid now. Put your name on it. It's a good song. It sounds great. You know, you sound good on it. So I said, right, okay, cool. I'll do that. So I was not actually expecting it to do like as well as it did, because it got added into their playlist at like number 3 straight away. And their playlist is one of the biggest user playlists created. So not editorial, but their one actually has like around about 6 million likes, which is really impressive for individuals playlist. So we were added in at that quite high up and stayed there for about 2 months. So the streams on it did really well. And it was pretty mad, because they were genuine streams too, because they actually came from a playlist that had been created for people who love that type of music. So the opportunities that came from that were pretty cool, to be honest. And then Slip and Slide, the most recent one, we actually wrote that in a camp in Switzerland. There was a few of us that are all good mates, and my friend, his family own a cabin out in Switzerland. So he said, let's go out, let's do a few days writing. So we did 2 days fully writing. And this was on the second day that we wrote this song. But we actually wrote it to a real slowed down R&B beat. So it was like, won't you come, da, 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 really slow when we wrote it. And I wasn't expecting anything to kind of come of it. But we did a production around it, made it sound a bit more current. And then it got sent off to Jamo, and he loved it and wanted to reproduce it. So obviously it'd gone with a production on there, but then he wanted to make it so it was his production, so that he was able to change elements of it. So it completely changed. And when we got sent back, I was quite excited with it, because again, it's like we were looking out over the Swiss Alps, not really expecting that anything would come of these, and it did. And there's like 3 of them that we've done that have all been taken, which is pretty cool, you know. So there's different ways of collaboration. It's like I've been in the room with people writing, and it's come from that. I've been in the room with the actual DJ, but I've always found that my more successful ones have been ones that I've done on my own or with somebody else and sent to them, because I feel like it gives them more creativity. I think in the room, when you're in the room with the producer, the writers, sometimes it's like trying to get that end product is a bit like difficult. Whereas when you've sent them that top line and they can have free reign to just go with it for a few days and see what they can come up with. For me, I found that's worked the best, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess it works both ways, doesn't it? Because when there's not the kind of time pressure of we've got X amount of hours together, in the studio, you know, we have to come up with something in that time. You know, that's pressure, and that doesn't always necessarily inspire the best work. It can do, but not always.
It can do, yeah.
And the flip side of that is, as you say, if you're giving somebody all the time in the world to experiment, to play around with this top line, you know, they then have license to try things and play around with things they wouldn't necessarily want to do if you're in the room with them for whatever reason. They might not want to, you know, do something that they think you'll judge them on, or they might not feel they have the creative freedom to do something really wacky or whatever it might be. So it can rub both ways for sure.
Definitely.
So I want to know how you kind of work through your splits and royalties with how you write, because one of the things that I get asked the most about is, you know, what royalties should I be getting, or how do I negotiate royalties, or where do I need to be registering these songs, or is there like a standard process that you go through, or do you have management that helps you through that, or talk me through your process?
So up until recently, I've been unmanaged. I'm currently with managers at the moment. But what I've done myself is we go into a session. Normally, right, it's just etiquette that you're going to split it equally amongst the people within the room. So say if there was 3 of us, we split it 33 each. And one of the lucky people would get 34. But we'd split it 33 each. But then what happens, right, is say if that's a top line, we'd send that off then to whoever else. If that was just the one person getting involved, sometimes what happens is it would then go 50-50. So it would be 50% to the DJ or the producer who was getting involved, and then it would go 50% to split between us. So then we would have to split that 50% 3 ways. Sometimes what happens though is that the DJ comes on and says, right, okay, I'll go equal splits with you all. So then that would work out that we get a quarter each, basically. But it kind of depends on who you're working with. I do equal splits on publishing. Like, I just find that a normal etiquette. But sometimes people don't, and that's totally fine. But again, I feel like for me, it works a lot better just doing it equal. And also, I'm quite a big advocate for songwriters to get master points as well. So that's something that I like to kind of bring into it if I can. I know that labels tend to not want to give up many points, so I always try to make it fair for all of us that we get like a share. And to be quite honest, right, the amount of money that you make from the master in the early stages is not enough to even, you know, bother over. But if that song was to do amazing, obviously a writer having maybe 3% on the master, it makes a difference. You know, I feel like looking after the people who are there for you and doing the stuff with you, then it works really well. So that's kind of something that I'm an advocate for, to be honest.
So I want to recap on a bunch of stuff that you covered there, because it's really useful information for people to know. So first of all, let's recap on ways of negotiating your writing splits. So there are basically two schools of thought. There's like the Nashville school of thought and the LA school of thought. The Nashville school of thought is how you operate, which is basically if you're in the room, you get an even split.
Yeah.
Versus the LA style, which is people can kind of try and argue it dependent upon how much they feel they've contributed, which is a messier way of working. But, you know, people can do what they want, as you say. There's then the situation where you send your top line off to a producer and they might say, okay, well, in the traditional sense of a song, the melody, i.e. the top line, is 50% of the song, like a half, and then the other half of the song is the instrumental, or the beat, as the kids say these days.
The kids,
So in that sense, you know, you've got this kind of 50-50 split between top line and instrumental. Or you might get a nice producer that's like, no, let's just, you know, split it evenly with all the writers that are involved. Again, that is on a per case basis. You know, there's not a, this is how you do it. It's, you know, these things are always negotiated, you know, individually. Then you need to understand the difference between publishing royalties and sound recording or master royalties. So any song creates two sets of royalties. There's the royalties for the actual writing, the song itself, which are the publishing royalties. And then there are the royalties for the sound recording or the master, as it's called, which are two separate things. So there are so many different bits that you need to kind of try and understand in order to make sure that you're getting your fair share of stuff as an artist. And if you don't understand this stuff, like, there are lots of people, unfortunately, that will take you for granted, that will kind of walk over you. Like you're talking about trying to negotiate a percentage of the master rights for the artist. Like, there are plenty of artists that maybe don't even know that that's a thing, you know, and the label are then just like, great, we'll keep all of the master to ourselves. Thanks very much. I know. But actually, if you're already doing all of the writing and you're funding your own studio time, there's no reason why you shouldn't be getting master points. The main reason for labels owning masters in the first place and historically is because they're paying for the records to be made. You know, they're paying for the studio time, they're paying for the engineers, so they have costs to recoup. If they have no costs to recoup, they shouldn't be getting 90% of the master. They should be giving you a fair share of that.
There's a lot of labels that, I mean, quite a few that I've worked with that are being very fair with their masters, and actually they're paying in advance as well. And that's something that I always recommend that people do, because I had no idea that you could be paid a vocal fee and that didn't mean they owned the song. That actually meant they were just paying you for the work, basically, for doing that. And actually you still then got all of the royalties, publishing, your master, which I had no idea about until probably about 2 years ago. I had no idea that was even a thing. So that's something that I always push people. There's people that I work with and they're not even asking for a production fee. I'm like, why are you not asking for that? Like, that should be a standard, like, and don't ever undersell yourself, because it does get around like, oh, this person did it for £500, and then it's like, oh, they'll take advantage of you then. It's like, you need to know the worth of your time and your recording and how much work that took, because the thing is, the way I think of it, right, is the years of training that I've had to do to get to where I am, it cost a lot of money, even though that cost my parents to pay it, or it cost the bursary scheme or whatever it was, it cost money. So it's kind of now you making that money back for the hours of time that you put in. And you shouldn't feel guilty for asking for money. You shouldn't feel guilty for asking labels for a certain amount of how much you feel, or like negotiating a master so that maybe you get a bit more. But yeah, I mean, again, this is stuff that is so up in the air of like what you could actually get and like who's willing to pay and who's not. It's a bit of a minefield, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. And the common pitfall is that, especially new artists that are trying to break in, they're so desperate to work, they're so desperate to get in, that they do devalue themselves. And you do have to do a bit of stuff for nothing initially, in order to build some portfolio and to get some reputation and some contacts, but not for very long.
No.
And actually, there is good information out there from like the MU in the UK, the Musicians Union, or like MCPS
the
and PRS.
as well.
They all have rates sheets on, like, this is, like the minimum we think you should be charging for X job, Y job. So if you don't have the confidence to just ask straight up, like, this is what I want, you can always refer back to those things and be like, look, the MU suggests that this is the minimum that I should be getting paid for this kind of work. Yeah. So, what are you going to do about it? Kind of, don't say what are you going to do about it, but, effectively, what are you going to do about it?
There's also organisations like Play Virtuoso and Hyper Tribe that offer this type of information as well. And they're really, really great organisations that I feel put artists on the right path and show them how to like kind of go about this without them feeling out of their depth. So they are just two that I want to put out there that I feel actually really help artists to discover what they're going to do and where they need to kind of put their foot down.
Yeah, great. So let's talk about revenue generation, income streams. Everybody knows that revenue from streaming is not very good. Maybe one day, it'll be fairer, but I don't know if you've read it. I don't know if you've read anything about the streaming 2.0 stuff that's going on in the press, but it sounds like it's even more going to be geared towards the bigger artists than the smaller indie artists. So, although on the face of it sounds great, it doesn't actually sound great if you look into it. But anyway, so if we're not relying on streaming as our primary income revenue building stream, what else can you do? What do you do in order to pay bills?
So there's a few things you can kind of do. I mean, obviously, live performance is like a top for an income. I mean, that is something that I love doing. I know some people don't particularly like doing it, but I love it. So it's quite amazing to be able to be on stage and be paid to be on stage. That is one thing as well. Don't ever, unless the gig is like a top gig, don't be doing nothing for free. Don't be going to bars and doing like an hour set for an exposure. I'm telling you now, the only people who are there are people who either you've invited or who are just there as their local. There is no point in doing anything for exposure unless it's like top level. And to be honest, right, even them top level things pay. It's like, don't be doing nothing for exposure. There was a thing I was sent from the MU years ago. It was like a little handbook about not doing gigs for free, basically, and knowing your worth. So that's one way I make money. There's a lot of ways that if you're toplining, for example, that you can not sell your top lines, but do top line work for a fee. So there's platforms such as like Sound Better which I'm a bit of an advocate for because I really like using their platform. And you can be on there as a producer, as a singer, as a writer, as even like a vocal engineer. And there's loads of stuff that is on there that people need work for. So I do that as well, which is quite like a nice feeling to know that I can get a job come through, I can do it in that day and I can make that money without even having to leave the house. That is quite a nice one to do. I really recommend trying to build a bit of a platform on there. And it's hard, right? I had that for 2 years before anything even happened with it. So I had that account on there for ages and I had no interest, no nothing. And I looked into who was doing well on there and looked at how they structured their bio, looked at how they presented themselves. And I thought, right, okay, I need to change it so that mine is like that. So kind of, you know, sorting the bio so that it was very attractive for people to want to work with. There's certain things like, you know, a turnaround time, knowing that people can rely on you for like however long basically that you're going to take on that project. And there's loads of things to look into with that. But yeah, you can also use your skills that you've learned to teach others. You do need some sort of qualification in it. I mean, I did my grade 8 classical singing and had distinction in it. Don't mean to brag, but I mean, it cost a lot to do the exam, so I might as well flex it. I did it when I was around about 15 or 16. And also with the grade 5 music theory, I did that as well and added distinction. So it's like you can use the qualifications that you got to then teach other people. That's like a good earner as well of things that you could do. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's like, I feel like when you have a plan A and you really work towards the plan A, I feel like you don't really need plan B, but it's nice to have things that you can generate income off that align with plan A. I feel like that's something good to have because you should definitely try and use stuff that's going to generate you money within the field that you're in. So it's like, for example, right, this is a bit of a stretch, but like social media management and doing social media for people, that's something that you would use as an artist for yourself. So it doesn't really take away from developing skills in an area that you're not going to use, because you will use that for yourself. You will use like looking at analytics for like someone else's business and seeing how that's worked. You can then apply that into yourself and think, right, am I viewing myself as a brand? Am I viewing my artistry as a business? Because it's like, realistically, at the end of the day, if you want to be an artist, you need to view yourself as a brand. Because if people can't associate you with something, then what is there to cling on to? It's like with me, I thought, right, I need a strong brand because, to be quite honest, just having dark hair isn't really going to do anything, you know? Lots of people have got, like, you know, there's lots of people that are doing really well and their hair is like their feature. So they'll have like bright colour hair, wacky hair, so that people can straight away look at them and go, that's Ice Spice, or that's Camila Cabello, or that's Dua Lipa, because she's done all of her albums based around her hair. So it's like she got red now for this one. She had the blonde one for Future Nostalgia. She had her normal brown hair for her title album. And I was like, what can I do? And I've always loved wearing hats. Like I used to wear like little military hats. And then I thought, actually, like having a hat that I stick to, that's like a style that I will wear. I feel like when I've been out and I've been at like different events, like Defected's events and like networking evenings, I've had people come over to me, not because like I'm mad, like in the game or whatever, but I've had people come over to me because they recognize me from the hat. And they'd be like, oh, ALIMISH. And it's like, it takes me back a bit because I think like I didn't realize that wearing a hat would have people associate me with the hat. So that's kind of then what I thought about with branding. I was like, right, I can brand everything around this silly hat. I can do everything around wearing these hats because then I'll make people think that's the girl who wears the hat who does this type of music. So that's kind of like a bit off topic, but trying to think of things you can use, learning stuff from other areas that you can make money from to apply to yourself is like a game changer.
Yeah. That there's so much in there to unpack.
Sorry.
I'm glad you meant I'm glad you brought up the hats because I wanted to say I love the hats. It's so Jamiroquai. I don't know if you even know who Jamiroquai is, but
yeah, people say that.
Bloody love Jamiroquai.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanna focus in on first of all, Sound Better. Absolutely agree. Sound Better is a great platform. I'm on there as a producer,
Great.
mixing engineer, mastering engineer. You're on there, and because it's a platform owned by Spotify, it links directly off Spotify profile. So
Yeah.
if you look at your Spotify profile, my Spotify profile,
Don't tell them that
there's
because
a
I'm not
link
linked.
there.
I'm not linked on it.
Well,
And
go
keep
and
it
do it
quiet.
today, for heaven's sake.
No, because so this is another way of making money is under aliases. So I have multiple aliases that, for example, reason I have them is because a lot of stuff might not line up because I have started the artist project now, and it's very much based around like the old school 90s type of sound and fun, and like I consider like Ibiza Classics type of stuff for me. So the ethereal sounding house music doesn't really align with that brand. So rather than making people confused about who I am as an artist, I thought, right, let me set up aliases that sound can be associated with that name, and that sound can be associated with that name. So that's kind of like what I've done with having aliases. So yeah, that's like something that I'm doing.
Keeping things streamlined and cohesive,
Yes.
which is important because people get bored easily these days, and
Yeah,
people don't
definitely.
like to think about stuff online. In the TikTok age of short form content, if people don't understand straight away what's going on, they'll swipe to something else.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but what you're talking about, branding and treating yourself as a business is so important. If you're whoever you are in whatever field, whether you want to be an artist or whether you want to be a writer or whether you want to be a session player or a producer or whatever, you are naive to think that you are not a business and you are not a brand.
Definitely.
People need to understand like straight away what you're about, because the whole industry is so saturated. There's so much noise with people trying to make it and people thinking that the music is enough, and the music is not enough. Like
No.
there's a whole world of amazing music that will go completely undiscovered forever because it's not associated with a strong enough brand or business identity. Like it's crucial, totally vital.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. People need to latch on to something. They need to have something that they can link to it. Otherwise, what's the point, And also, it's like with like TikTok being such a massive platform for music that's done incredibly well, I feel like there's a lot lacking with like them thinking of an artist development. So it's like you'll get a viral song and people are all aiming for a viral song, but then what comes from that? You need to think of yourself as an artist and a brand that people can latch them songs back onto and think, oh, that's that girl who does this, or that's that boy that does this, So that's like a big thing. And that's something that record labels are lacking on. I'm going to say that because I feel like there needs to be that artist development. So rather than them just saying, oh, this person's had a viral song, quick, let's release the next song. Like people like the thing of not knowing what's coming next. Like people like the thing of like, oh, when is this artist that I love this song going to release the next song? Rather than labels just like pushing stuff out, they need to think like, let's actually develop this person so that then we can put out their next song and it's going to do just as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you for sure. I want to ask you about your own artistry as a rising female artist in the EDM world. How do you feel opportunities are for female artists? Do you feel like stuff is kind of fair and equal, or is there room for improvement? Because over the last few years, there's been a lot of press about opportunities for female artists and headliners at festivals. Why is it so overwhelmingly dominated by male artists? How do you feel that is in the EDM world?
As far as I'm concerned with my own experience, I feel like I have been treated as an equal in everything I've gone into. I feel like the way that like my male co-writers and producers are, I feel like they really champion what I do. Like I'll go in with like a melody or I'll go in with like a basic prod and they want to do it. They want to help me. They want to make that into the vision that I'm seeing. Like for example, Ooh La La, which was my first solo track, that was done with the boys from Yola Okoba, and I did quite a lot of the prod on it. like the initial prod anyway. And then they helped me bring that more to life. And it was like, I'm then a producer on the track from coming up with this stuff on Machine. Like I love the Machine M Audio, not M Audio, oh my God, Native Instruments.
Native Instruments, yeah.
So it's not a complete wrong one. But I love doing stuff on that. But it's like, I know that I'm not able to fully produce to the standard that I want. And I found that I've been in with people that kind of champion that. So from my experience, I'm not going to speak on behalf of everybody. I feel like I've been around the right people who have made me feel as if I'm a complete equal in this. And I wouldn't want to say that I feel like I haven't had the same opportunities. I feel like I've kind of made the opportunity. So when things start to progress, there might be situations where I feel like things maybe not be fair. But as far as I'm concerned, for the moment, I feel like things have been all right for me. But also, I do feel like it is a shame to see, not so many females being a headliner on festivals like Reading and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like there will be a change in the next few years because I do feel like there's been enough of an uproar about it. So yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, I've had quite good treatment, but I do really feel for any of my other peers, females who have had the like a bit of a bad end of the stick. So yeah, my heart goes out to them. With me, I've had all right so far. Fingers crossed it continues, but let's see.
Well, good. I'm glad that things have been good for you so far. And as you say, if we're talking about like festival headliners and stuff, particularly, that's actually not a problem that you can solve overnight because
no,
in my opinion anyway, that the reason that there aren't enough female artists headlining festivals is because there aren't enough female artists of that level of success that can fill those slots. And that is something that needs to be addressed from further down. That's going to take time for, to build enough female artists to that kind of level of status that they can justify those slots. You can't just say, right, well, we're just going to put some more female artists as headliners, because if they're... I do feel
like there are quite a lot that could be in that position. I do feel like there are a lot that will be put on stages below that I actually feel like, oh God, they could probably replace that person. So I do feel like there are a lot of situations it could potentially be, maybe not headline, but on the main stage, on that slot that's before headline. I do feel like there are a few instances, like for example, like, Becky Hill to me, I mean, it's because I'm a massive fan, but Becky Hill to me should be up there with like Calvin Harris and David Guetta, because I mean, she is the voice of dance music, so it's like, without her voice, what would the track be? The track wouldn't be anything, I don't feel like, in comparison to what it is with her voice. So I do feel like a lot of the females in dance music I'm going to talk about, I feel like a lot of them could be at that level, because to be quite honest, I feel like the song is carried by the voice. So like, for example, Hayla, like she should be up there, especially in like I think America, because she does a lot of stuff out there. I feel like her voice is like, should be of a headline status, but I feel like because obviously these tracks are like DJ and singer, it's like realistically then they're like, oh, DJ, let's put a DJ there. But I do feel I do feel like there'll be a change. I do feel like there's going to be a lot of artists coming through who are vocalists, because like that's what I've loved watching with Hayla. I don't know if you know who Hayla is, but I've loved watching her doing her solo stuff as well, because it very much aligns with the stuff that she's been doing with the DJs, and it feels like an artist. When I listen to the songs, I feel like I'm hearing an artist on the song, not just a singer. So it feels like I'm hearing the person who's created this. So I do feel like there will be a change. I do feel like, yeah, and I agree with you that sometimes I don't feel like they've developed them to the headline status, but again, I do feel like there's a lot that will change over the next few years. And I mean, I want it to change, because I would like at some point for that to be me.
Absolutely. And actually an interesting thing that you mentioned there, which is kind of specific to the EDM world and the way that collaborations work, is, it's the DJs and the producers that get the billings on the festivals. It's Avicii, it's David Guetta, it's Calvin Harris, whoever. But actually vocalists like Becky Hill, who is, a phenomenal vocalist, and she's got loads and loads of features on
Yeah.
very, very successful tracks. She should be getting the slots in the same way that Calvin Harris is getting the slots, because she's got as many hits, but because she's not, the DJ, it doesn't quite work the same way. And that, as you say, that doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Becky now, over the past 2-3 years, is really starting to get her praise and her flowers and the recognition that I feel like she deserves. She did it's the first female dance artist to do a arena tour, which I find mad. That's so inspiring as somebody who I would say I'm quite relatively new to this. Seeing somebody that I look up to being able to do that gives I feel like that gives a lot of us the hope that we'll be able to do that one day. And I see her on a lot of festival lineups and stuff, and I just feel like it is starting to be that people are getting their flowers that deserve it. So yeah,
absolutely. So you recently performed with Becky Hill. You supported her in, what was the venue in Wales? Remind me the name.
It's called the Utilita Arena in Cardiff.
Utilita. And you perform with Example as well. I know from teaching you in school that you love performing. You're a really natural performer. You really you can't help but get really stuck in. Tell me a bit about how you have to adapt your performance in a live situation versus studio. What do you do differently when you're physically performing as opposed to recording a vocal?
Well, I tell you, it's night and day, because recording, normally you do the same part a lot of times and then you comp the take. So you pick the best parts out of the take. So I hate recording, if I'm honest with you, because I don't like the fact that I can't perform it. And I'll perform each take where it's you can't get into a line that's being repeated and repeated until you get the best version of it. So preparing for something like a live performance, for example, I'm so much of a control freak. I do everything myself. I made the visuals to go alongside on stage, because I wanted for people to kind of see and take them on the journey of what I can kind of see in my head whilst I'm on stage. So I made all of the visuals to go alongside it, because I wanted people to think of colour for each song. I wanted them to think of oh, that's the colour that I would associate to that song. So when I was on stage performing, it's the practice for that in preparation was a lot, because I wanted to make sure that I was physically fit to be on stage, because a lot of it comes down to the stamina. I had a half an hour slot, so I needed to make sure that for half an hour I could sing, run about, jump up and down, and still be in tune. So what I did was I went to gym every day. I did a lot of running just to make sure that my fitness was up. I did quite a lot of skipping as well and singing the same time, because I just wanted to make sure I could do it. And it's also when you get out on stage, the adrenaline kicks in so much, and the fact there's so many people there, you kind of forget all of the prep that you've done. So to make sure that I was physically fit to do it was a massive thing that I would recommend to everybody. You need to make sure that you have the stamina to be able to do it, that you're able to do however long of a set that you're given, and make sure that you're actually able to go for that amount of time. So I used to run for 45 minutes just to make sure that I could go a bit extra. Because to be honest, I'm not that fit as a person. I'm not particularly a gym girl or whatever. So I realized that, wow, I've really not got good stamina for this. So that was something that I made sure in advance that I kind of got together, because it wasn't confirmed, the Becky Hill gig, until a month before. So it was a real flat out month with 2 holidays, by the way. I'm not a holiday person, but I did book 2 holidays because I thought I might as well. And they both were before the gig. So I was just this couldn't come at a worse time. So I'm sat on my bed in Turkey doing all these visuals and sorting all the set out and making tracks for certain ones. And it was a lot. It's a lot of preparation for 30 minutes of what people see. But yeah. And that was what I was worried about, because I was thinking there's so much preparation into this. If something goes wrong, then it's it's a lot of time that have gone into it. But it was great.
Physical fitness as a performer is so important, like so important. When I was touring properly years ago in my rock band, you know, the way that we would rehearse is that we would, when we're prepping for a tour, you know, we'd set up our rehearsal studio as a stage. We'd set up a couple of video cameras. We would perform the set like full, all in, you know, performing it, like moshing away, getting sweaty, giving it all, watch back the videos, and then go again. And we'd do it like 4 or 5 times with a few notes in between, you know, so that we know that if we can do it 5 times in a row, fully committed, you can do it once.
Mm-hmm.
But
that was what I was doing with my dancers. Like, we had rehearsals and we were doing it back to back to back. And we did that like twice, like full days. And it's like, you realize then, like, the more comfortable you get with it, it's going to be so much easier on the night. You can't just leave stuff to, let's leave it till the night. You can't do that. You can't do that at all.
Right. We need to start wrapping up because we've been going on. So I want to ask you a few bits about you. So what can people expect from you in, you know, the next months or this year in terms of releases or other gigs and performances?
So I'm actually prepping for my whole bulk of work for my EP to come out this year. People will actually get a slice of what ALIMISH is. So yeah, I'm not going to go too much into detail because I want for people to kind of see what's going to happen. I'm very excited about it, by the way. I feel like it's something that I've wanted to put out for so long, but never really found the right way of doing it or executing it. And it's just come together so nicely. So yeah, I'm not going to go too much into detail because I am looking forward to people seeing what comes of it. But yeah, stay tuned because it is going to be quite exciting year.
Amazing. So we have an EP to look forward to. And beyond that, have you got any like dream collaborators? Are there people on your like wish list of, I really want to work with them or them? Like who's on your hit list?
Well, I would love to write for Becky Hill one day. I would really like to do that. But for me, I would love to do a track with David Guetta. That would be cool.
Yes, it would. Yeah. I mean, he's an icon, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. I used to love his song on the car advert, the Love Don't Let Me Go. Do you remember the boom, 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 boom? And I love that. So that was like my first song for David Guetta. And yeah, I love him.
Amazing. ALIMISH, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much
very much
for your time. I've loved it.
It's been lovely. And it's been lovely chatting with you again.